Good evening. There we go. Thank you. I figured I'd get reminded anyway. Welcome to the Bennington Select Board meeting. It's August 14th, and we are gathered here on basically our first meeting in the month of August. Before we start the meeting, I'm going to do something that's a little bit out of order, and it was not on the agenda. I would ask this board and assembled citizens to join with me in this brief resolution which I am offering, condemning the hate and violence incited by the gathering of white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia on Saturday.
Hear, hear.
It is time for us to speak up. This is my resolution I offer, and if it's found in order, I would like all of us to join in its acceptance or rejection. I will read it as follows. Resolved, we, the Select Board and citizens of the town of Bennington, Vermont, decry the violence incited by those bigots who, under the guise of the First Amendment, spew racism and hate in a country made great by the sacrifices of many. If we are to remain truly great, we must and will embrace all individuals and will not be diverted by the repugnant actions of these terrorists and their sympathizers who attempt to divide us with their words and deeds. That is my resolution. I will look for a second.
Second.
Well, you've got a second. I was going to give you a first.
First and second. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any Thank you. This is a community response. This is not, I'm just the spokesperson for the board tonight and for the community, because I think our sense of injustice and peril to our democracy is all too evident, and this is a response in a small way from a small but caring community. So thank you very much. I would now like to have our board members introduce themselves.
Jean Connor.
Jim Carroll.
Tom Jacobs.
I'm Donald Campbell.
Hello, I'm Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening, Chad Gordon.
And
Who are you?
Last but not least, Carson Thurber.
but looks good. That white shirt and the tie must have come right from work. Thank you. Now, if we could all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Jean, would you lead us?
Sure.
And I've asked Jean to do this basically in memory of Heather Hare, who among the injured and also the two police officers gave their lives up for a cause which they felt was important to them and to us. So Jean, would you lead us? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Jean. We do have a consent agenda consisting of minutes of the July 24th and July 31st meetings, along with the warrants which I have reviewed and executed on behalf of the board. I'll entertain a motion for their acceptance.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Further discussion on the consent agenda. I will abstain from the minutes of July 31, which I was not present. All in favor of the consent agenda signify by aye.
Aye.
That's 7 in favor and no opposition. As is our practice, we offer the opportunity to citizens to come up and visit with the board on matters that are not already on the agenda. Please try to keep your comments relatively and briefly succinct. I will not cut anyone off unless my co-chair directs me to. So please step forward, and I see Dr. Dundas who signed in first.
Sue Andrews as well.
Oh, hi, Sue. I'm sorry.
Well, at the last board meeting, we presented some things about oral health in our community, Charlie Jingo, who cannot be here tonight, gave an introduction, and he was supposed to also do a wrap-up, but did not because of time. So we wound up with Mike Bethel doing our wrap-up, and we couldn't really let that stand, so we came back tonight to give that little wrap-up. Sue has a resolution that she's written, a series of things that we need to think about. I have notes from Charlie Jingo, and I will give those to the board later on.
If you'd like to submit them to the board secretary, we will incorporate them.
I will. So Sue?
Thank you. Sue Andrews. So the Bennington Oral Health Coalition gave you a lot of information when we were here on July 24th. Some of it was positive, some of it was disturbing, and some of it was a loud call to action. To address some of the oral health issues in our community will require a robust community response, especially given the current national climate. Local efforts to improve health and wellness are more important than ever. Here are several themes and requests that came out of our work and which, as Dr. Dundas has said, would have been presented last time had time warranted. First is awareness. The healthcare needs, including oral health needs of many Bennington residents who live in poverty, but also of those who are working and who do not have access to health or dental insurance, or those who live from paycheck to paycheck, are not always met in ordinary ways. Bad or poor oral health, no teeth, missing teeth, gum disease, etc., all have an economic impact on the individuals affected by that. We've got to look at multiple approaches to address these issues. Second, we ask that you, as the Select Board, give serious consideration to the science, practice, and history of community water fluoridation. The cornerstone of an effective oral health program is community water fluoridation. It is one of the simplest, most cost-effective, safest, and affordable ways to improve the overall health in a community. More than 75% of all Americans currently receive the dental health benefits of community water fluoridation.
How many?
75%. Yeah, we are in the minority here. In the way that a carpenter would need a cornerstone to construct a brick building, we will need community water fluoridation as the cornerstone of any successful oral health program going forward. This will be challenging because, as we have seen, anti-fluoridationists have been able to insert a wedge of fear into the minds of local citizens, despite a 75-year history of its safe and effective use. Lastly, we need you to talk about, you as the Select Board, to talk about the values and aspirations that we all have as friends, relatives, neighbors, and fellow citizens. If we truly want to get the community as a whole to do something positive about oral health for everyone who lives here, in essence, to get their total, lasting, and unwavering support, we should try neither to cajole them judgmentally nor convince them forcefully. We can't just argue about the facts and the science. We need to inspire the community toward a vision that all of us can and really do care about. Maybe something as simple as a child's life really is better with teeth. That's a good place to start. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will give you Charlie's written statement that he was going to make at the last meeting, but I wanted to point out two specific things that we would ask of the board. One is that we would like the board and the administration to find out the cost of initial installation of a fluoridation system and the cost for yearly upkeep and supplies and maintenance. And secondly, we would ask that you consider that people from the department, the appropriate department, be sent to Rutland so that they can look over the fluoridation system that they have in Rutland, and perhaps that would ease some of the negativity that surrounds this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
May I comment?
Ron, you're up next. Thanks. This is Ron Alderman. Thank you for visiting with us, Ron, and the record will indicate that Ron Alderman is here.
Well, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good evening. Let me state first that I'm not going to speak off the cuff, because if I do, I'll get rambling and forget where I am, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So I'm just going to read these 25 pages. I'm sorry, I got your attention. 2 pages. I'll note that I have here.
Are you commenting about the...
I am commenting on the Apple Hill Chelsea solar panel controversy.
So unfortunately, because it's on the agenda, that's not really something that we're prepared to comment or discuss. Because if you did, others would, under the guise of a chat with the select board. So we restrict the citizens' comment period to matters that are not on the agenda, because as I see from the agenda, it's the next 2 agenda items down. So if you might want to wait until that comes up at that point, and you'll get some direction from the chair at that point.
Well, what's the chair's feeling at the moment? I can do this and not later.
I'm going to have to defer
Mr. Campbell?
to...
Mr. Campbell, he passed the
The
buck to
vice
you.
chair's feeling is that we're going to hear from our attorney, and there's going to be an opportunity to ask questions of our attorney and to press him for details.
But I can't just make these remarks that I spent all this time figuring out.
I appreciate that. We've had 2 very long meetings of remarks, and I think we're going to work on the legal side of things tonight.
This is 3 minutes. Less than 3 minutes.
We
really
understand that,
appreciate the
Ron,
fact
and
you took the
appreciate
time.
it. But, 1 3-minute leads to another 6 to 9, and then we end up in a dialogue on matters that potentially have already been before the board. That's why we try to limit citizens' comments to matters that are not on the agenda.
Didn't know that.
I'm sorry. I wasn't
Sorry
very-
about that.
Okay,
Okay.
no problem. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you for your
patience.
Your patience.
Looks like John Shanahan signed up. Good evening,
and
John.
thanks for giving me a few minutes.
Sure.
I know you have a big agenda, so I'll be short. But I was asked to speak tonight just to bring it to the attention of the community in case they're unaware of a marketing program that's taking place right now regarding downtown Bennington. Most of you have probably seen it, but currently we have commercial broadcasting advertising running in the Albany market. We have 2 commercial spots that were shot and edited by tonight's cameraman, Mike Cutler, to run on both Channel 10 and Fox 23. These 2 commercial spots are specifically for downtown Bennington, and they were made possible by efforts started by Eric Peterson, the director of Old Castle Theater, in conjunction with a group of us. That was paid for by a grant that he applied through the Citizens for Greater Bennington, a grant that he applied and received in the amount of $15,000. One stipulation for that grant was that he received $10,000 in matching funds, but Eric raised almost an additional $13,000. So this campaign that we have going in Albany right now is a $28,000 marketing campaign. which is one of the largest marketing campaigns for Bennington in our closest, largest market. If you have the opportunity to see Channel 10 or 23, you've probably already seen them, but if not, you can go to Vimeo, vimeo.com, type in Bennington Downtown Commercial, and then click on Commercial 1 and Commercial 2. The reason there are two commercials is they're geared toward two different markets. The first market is the older, more affluent market in the Albany, or demographic in the Albany market. And then the second one's geared more toward the younger millennial group, which is craft beers, events, nightlife, and activities. And they both came out beautiful. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, that those are running.
Are they running now?
They are. They're running for 3 months. $28,000 got us production cost, which was very low. Thank you to Mike, because we wanted to put the majority into airtime. We saved a few $1,000 left for material that will match the brand that we're presenting over there, so that when they arrive, that message is followed through on. So we're going to do that. Started August 1st, and they're going to continue through October. So those things will be available in downtown.
I've seen them both, and they're really very, very well done.
Mike's putting the camera right on you now.
They're really well done. The videography is excellent, and you can see them on Mike's Facebook page as well as mine, because I shared them. They're really well done.
Is there a way to measure the success of the campaign? How do you do that other than...
I suppose it's the number of views, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Mike's page on Cat TV there so far has received 2,200 views, and that's just on that page. It's been shared hundreds and hundreds of times. And views are nice, but they don't usually translate into anything other than a view. So what we're hoping is once we get the supporting marketing material here in Bennington, we'll be able to get some comments. Most of it will be anecdotal, because it's hard to put a dollar on the result of that effort.
Great. We're looking forward to getting the follow-up on how things are going. This is great, because that is a market that
huge.
Has been untapped because of expense, I'm sure.
Well, it's also what sets Bennington apart from the entire state is we literally have 1.5 million people in our backyard. So we're taking the money we have and gearing it toward them. And that's not the only promotional effort in that area. Need to mention also that the Bennington Area Arts Council ran a 6-week promotion over in Albany that they raised the money and paid for themselves at the Silver Cinema, which is the old Spectrum Theater, and it ran for 6 weeks on 8 screens, 7 days a week, and the theater also handed out our promotional material. So the two of them running in the Albany market is a first.
John, have there been any measurable results from those efforts?
From the average, well, that was Tom was just asking. They've only started a few weeks ago. And our goal was to get them to run, we're going to go through a lull at the end of August until the fall foliage season kicks in. So we're hoping really to see the results during that period. Right now, it's been very busy. The bubble for the AT has come through town, so the last couple of weeks have been really busy with hikers. We had just coming off the Bennington Arts Weekend, and of course all the events that the fire department put forward this weekend. Been very busy weekends, but we know the lull's coming up with the beginning of school, so we're hoping to receive the results at that point, especially to the demographic of the older, more affluent, the children are grown and gone, that have the freedom to travel end of August and beginning of September.
Great, John. Thanks. And the kiosk looks great.
Thank you.
I saw you
very much.
putting the doors back in.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. I need some help here on the next one. It looks like someone had signed their name, but that was it. Does that make anything to you?
Looks like Sue.
I think it looks like hieroglyphics. If someone has made an entry that they would like to speak, because I won't hold you to it because your handwriting is almost as bad as mine. Let's talk with Jackie Kelly, please. Good evening, Jackie.
What did I think? Well,
Bus stops.
Bus stops. A year ago, I was here asking about bus stops in downtown Bennington, particularly for our tourists. I mean, you're having this big campaign to bring people here, and they don't know where to go. And some stops on the route, perhaps, the old First Church, Bennington Monument, even up to Robert Frost's house. I took our new Bennington Elementary principal on a little tour of downtown, and she said, she would have never seen any of these things, and unless it was for that. And unless you have a car and a big map, I mean, how do you get around? But a lot of people, particularly if you come by bus to Bennington, would like to do a little, tour, and some of our walking is great and far between. And a lot of people, of course, like to go to the covered bridges, and finally we now have signs for those, which is great. And so I'm asking again, can we have bus stops? Or do we have to still, fall in the street and hail them down as they pass by?
I'm going to defer to the town manager, but I would love to see a trolley going around, the bus trolley, like you see in a lot of the communities, to pick up folks like that. But anyway, another dream for another day.
I really don't have an answer for that. We'd have to work with Green Mountain Community Network, that is the public transportation. I know that they have talked about adding bus stops to their routes, specific stops along their routes, but we haven't crossed that threshold into action at this point.
So should I come back in December?
Or sooner.
I wonder, Stu, if we could come up with some signs that, wave if you want to ride.
Well,
I mean, because you have said that if you simply wave the buses down, they'll pick you up.
But is this an issue for the town, or is this an issue for Green Mountain?
Yes.
I mean,
I think it's coordinating with...
Jackie, have you
it's kind of
spoken
both.
with them?
I mean, in a sense. I was thinking, those little placards that all of a sudden appeared to say, yield in the crosswalk. They're little yellow signs.
Yeah.
That keep getting run over.
Can we do something like that?
I'd prefer not to.
But Jackie, have you approached Green Mountain?
We have enough
No, I
signage.
haven't.
We have enough signage in the downtown.
I thought it was the responsibility of the town.
Okay.
To the sign.
Okay, let's...
But there's clearly...
We'll follow up and
a desire
keep us
for it.
focused, and we can talk about it.
Right,
'cause
so
I think-
it's just that if you bring all these people here, if you don't have, especially a bus, how do they get to these other places? Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
We have the next matter on our business agenda is the Shire's housing grant acceptance possibility for the Applegate Rehab Project. Is Stephanie going to speak to that? Or Stephanie, thank you. Didn't see you. Stephanie Lane. The board has received all of the information relative to the grant, so you don't have to spend a lot of time on that, Stephanie. But maybe give us the highlights of why the request is being made and why the town's acceptance is critical to making this happen.
Sure. Thank you to the Select Board for allowing me to speak this evening. And I'm here basically to request the acceptance of the VCDP grant agreement with the Town of Bennington as the grantee. This is a required step. I have a resolution that would need to be approved per VCDP. And it's a grant for $350,000 is the grant amount, with $345,000 that actually goes into the project. That leaves the remaining $5,000 for legal fees and administrative costs for the town as well. And this grant is for the Applegate Biomass Rehab Project, which is well under construction. Actually, we anticipate completion within about a month's time.
You had briefed us not too long ago about the projects and the considerations that have gone into the application. There are no new residence units being as part of this grant, right? Are there any new units?
No, there are not. It's for rehab of existing 104 units and the biomass plant.
Right. We've had the material. Are there any questions before we have a motion?
just a small question, but is this the final portion of funding that you'll be looking for? Or are you on budget? How's it coming?
We are on budget, actually, yes. Thankfully, we actually had a little extra in our contingency that we're now finding good use for. We won't have it for long, but we have come in under budget, so we're able to do a little extra work in the units, so we're very pleased about that.
And this will more or less close out the fundraising for that project?
The rest of the funding is in place for this,
Okay,
yes.
great. Thank you.
Other board members? I'll entertain a motion for the acceptance of the motion, the amendment, the application. Could I have
Move
that?
that we support this grant resolution.
Okay. Could I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion on the acceptance of the grant application. Hearing none, all in favor of the board signify by aye.
Aye.
I'm going to recuse myself. I'm on the board of Shires.
There's 6 in favor and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep,
Would you
thank
like
you
a
very much.
copy of the actual PM1 resolution?
I'm going to circulate that, Stephanie.
He's got it
All
right.
right,
Yeah,
perfect.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Apple Hill Chelsea Solar. I will be recusing myself and transferring the responsibilities of chair over to vice chair. Donald, are you ready to take that on?
You bet.
I'm recusing myself now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Recuse away. All right, well, thank you for the pass-off, Tom. So tonight we will be hearing from Rob Wilmington, I think I saw him slip in at some point. Good, he's with us. Rob is our town attorney. And by way of history, of course, we've had 2 long meetings on this subject and a couple of long, well, not long, but very intense executive sessions on the subject. And I guess I'm just going to take a brief opportunity to remind the board that depending on what happens tonight, and maybe not even depending, we are in litigation. And as much as we may want to express our opinions and we may want to engage in this, we can't right now because anything we say will potentially be used as fodder against us. So we're going to continue to try to bite our tongues when we feel like expressing our opinions on things like this. But I think what we have come up with as a process is that at the last meeting that we had in executive session, we had a lot of time to talk about things. We made no decisions, but we were asked our attorney essentially to come up with the best recommendation for a path forward. And so, Rob, if you're willing, I'd love to invite you up and have you explain to us how you think the town should proceed.
Thank you. I think it might be helpful if I do it this way. Just summarize the recommendation and then go back and give an overview of where we are and how we got here, because it is, I think, even for people who've been following it closely, somewhat confusing. There's several cases. There's been a lot of contested proceedings, and they're more ahead. So I'll start with the recommendation. I'll go back and explain how we got here and what the basis of the recommendation is. And I'm happy to answer questions from the board and if you want to open to the public from them as well. My recommendation is that the town, in the 2 present proceedings, adopt the following position. With regard to the Chelsea solar field, which has been rejected by the Public Utilities Commission, formerly the Public Service Board, and is now before the Vermont Supreme Court, that the town continue its opposition in the Supreme Court to that proceeding. The Apple Hill project's in a somewhat different procedural setting because the revised plan that the developers submitted to the Public Utilities Commission has been accepted for hearing by the hearing officer. And so at some point, and probably sooner rather than later, there'll be a hearing not on the original plan that the town has filed opposition to, but to a revised plan. And for reasons that I can explain, my recommendation is that the town not take the position with regard to the revised plan that it fails to comply with the town plan that was in effect when the original application was filed because of the changes in that plan. The town may want to consider additional conditions that would be appropriate to assure, for example, that landscaping is done and maintained, that there is...
Move it closer. Move it closer to you.
I understand people are having trouble hearing me, so I will pick up and hope I pick up at the right spot. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that earlier. What I was saying with regard to Apple Hill is that given the changes in the project, which I will describe, and given the fact that the Public Utilities Commission is now going to hear the revised project, not the original project, that my recommendation is the town not oppose the revised project on the grounds that it does not comply with the town plan. The town may wish to engage in conditions that assure that landscaping will be maintained throughout the life of the project, that there will be removal when the project is done, and other similar types of standards. So let me give a little background as to how we got where we are. There are two separate projects, Chelsea and Apple Hill. Though they involve the same developer and though they're next to each other, they are being and have been considered separately by what was formerly the Vermont Public Service Board and is now called the Public Utilities Commission. The Chelsea project was heard first. It went through a hearing. The Department of Public Service, the state advocacy arm, did not oppose it. The town did not participate. Of the many neighbors, only one person, Libby Harris, participated. That went through a complete hearing. Sometime soon after that hearing was completed and before the hearing on the Apple Hill development, 2 years ago this summer, this board, and some of you are new and some of the members who participated are now off, heard a presentation about the Apple Hill development. And several days before the hearing on that development, decided that it did not meet the criteria of the town plan, and the town of Bennington should oppose that development. And we entered an immediate appearance in that proceeding and were able to attend the hearing and took the position for the town that Apple Hill did not comply with the town plan. And the reason for that was, I think, fairly clearly stated. The town plan provided that development in the rural conservation area, and I'm going to quote here, cannot be sited in prominently visible locations on hillsides or ridgelines, shall utilize earth tone colors and non-reflective materials on exterior surfaces of all structures, and must minimize clearing of natural vegetation. And we submitted a fairly extensive brief to the Public Service Board to argue that the Apple Hill project, which would have clear-cut the entire parcel involved, which would have been visible from many locations, and which did not have any meaningful on-site screening, did not comply with those standards, and therefore did not meet the aesthetic criteria under the statute governing the Public Service Board, and would not be consistent with orderly development of the region under our plan. After we filed that brief, Libby Harris, who's been very, I think, effective and dogged in her advocacy, took those arguments and submitted them along with others to the Public Service Board in connection with the Chelsea proceeding, which the town was at that point not a party to because it had already had the hearing. And the Public Service Board came down here for a site visit on Apple Hill. We had all the submittals in. And then the hearing officer proposed that the Chelsea project be approved with some sort of standard conditions, found that it complied with the town plan, found that it was a perfectly fine project. The Public Service Board, in the first instance that I'm aware of in which they've ever rejected an alternative energy project based on nonconformance to the town plan, overruled their own hearing officer, relied on the arguments that we had made in Apple Hill and that Libby had presented to them in Chelsea, and found that the project as it was originally conceived did not comply with the Bennington town plan. The developers immediately filed, I lost track of the number of pages of motions challenging that on many grounds, and that those filings essentially sat for a year before the Public Service Board. The board didn't rule on them. There was just silence up there. And finally, earlier this year, the board rejected all the challenges to the Chelsea decision, reaffirmed this decision in the Chelsea case, and left a number of them still undecided in the Apple Hill case, but gave it back to the hearing officer, who decided that he would review a revised plan. The plan was revised by the developer, I would say, in an attempt to deal with the obvious deficiencies of the original plan as compared to the requirements of the town plan. At the same time, they were filing voluminous papers before the Public Service Board. I think they recognized that the plans that they had originally submitted really, this is my words, not theirs, but really didn't conform with the town plan, and that the position that had been advanced by the town had merit and was likely to prevail. And so they proposed a number of changes to both projects, significant number of changes. And I'm just going to summarize them briefly. I think that probably most of the people here know what they were, but I'm going to refer to the ones principally on Apple Hill. They changed the tilt of the units. They reduced their height from 9 feet to 7 feet. They reduced the space between the rows. They proposed to use a new higher wattage unit, which allowed them to compress the footprint. For the two projects together, I know I started by saying I was going to deal with Apple Hill, they reduced the footprint by about 9 acres. And they reduced the clearing by 9 acres. By doing that, they changed the buffering and actually put in buffering around the project. I mean, one of the real deficiencies in their original plan was that they had no buffering whatsoever, and they made a deal with the Public Service Department and with the Vermont Agency of Transportation, whereby the Agency of Transportation would allow them to plant a small number of shrubs or trees between the site and the Welcome Center on state of Vermont land, which the state of Vermont could make them rip up at any time. They had no right to put it there. They just had the opportunity, but no guarantee it would stay there. And the Public Service Department said, but you don't have to spend more than $5,000. And the hearing officer said, and you can figure out whether you need this after the project's built. It was defective because it didn't involve their own property. They had no control over it. It was defective because there was a completely arbitrary negotiated dollar amount on it. And it was defective because they didn't make the proposal at the time it was going through the hearing process. They were proposing to sort of walk the property later. That's all gone in the revised project. The vegetation is going to be on their project and is called out in detailed plans. The type of the modules that they proposed are now all black in most of the locations where there'd be any visibility. They have proposed a fence with black meshing to partially screen that boundary along the west side, parallel to Route 7. They've increased and specified new landscape mitigation on the north project by the neighborhoods. And they've submitted quite detailed site plans which really specify what they're going to be doing. They brought their aesthetic expert into one of the earlier hearings on this project, based on the documentation they provided, gave a pretty much unqualified view about the absence of visibility. And they did some other studies dealing with wind and noise to look at the impacts of the project. And having done all that, they proposed to this board, as I think everyone knows, that they wanted the board to support both projects. They wanted the board to agree to the remanding of the Chelsea project from the Vermont Supreme Court back to the Public Utilities Commission with a stipulation that it could be approved as revised. And they asked that the board stipulate to approval of the Apple Hill project as revised. And they offered to pay the town of Bennington a total of $200,000, $100,000 for each project, when and if the projects were constructed and started operation. I think everyone here knows that you've held 2 public hearings about that. There's been a lot of comment about that. We've had a chance to talk about it. And it raises a number of issues. I think from the beginning, the charge that you've given us as your lawyers has been to make sure that the provisions of the town plan are implemented. And so we needed to address that in terms of where the projects are in litigation right now. Right now, the Chelsea project is the old project that is before the Vermont Supreme Court, that has the deficiencies that we've talked about. And our recommendation is that if they want to continue to litigate that before the Vermont Supreme Court, you should continue to oppose that for the reasons you've opposed those early projects, the earlier version of the project from the beginning. The Apple Hill is a different issue. The issues that we argued and that we brought out before the Public Service Board have been addressed substantially by this revised project. And I don't want to get into here statements about what that board will do or what that board won't do. Anything we say here can and will be used against us by someone, I suppose. But I think that my advice to you is that these changes are directly driven by the requirements of the Bennington Town Plan and represent an attempt to comply with those requirements of the town plan that we've identified. And that based on the fact that that's the project that the Public Utilities Commission, as it's now called, is going to consider, our recommendation to you is not that you enter into a stipulation that it's great, but that you not oppose it on the grounds that it had the same demerits as, and didn't conform to your town plan for the reasons that the earlier project clearly did not. I think there's one other issue that I've heard in some of the discussion here, which is the question of whether the town plan bars alternative energy projects entirely in the rural conservation district. That's not something we've ever developed in our briefing to the Public Service Board, nor do I think that that is a position that you could or should take. I mean, this board recently approved and supported a project out by the Paper Mill Bridge that's in that district. There's another project in the West End that's been approved by this board that's in that district. The GMP substation is in that district. And your bylaws have a number of commercial uses, the zoning bylaws, that are allowed in that district. And though the town has not completed the map it's working on of favored areas for solar, the most recent draft has, I think, well over 30% of the sites in that district. So I don't think the position that somehow the town plan bars alternative energy projects in the rural conservation district is consistent with your zoning. It's not consistent with the precedents that have been done, and it's not consistent with the planning process that seems to be going on now. So that issue, I don't think, is grounds to argue that the town plan bars all alternative energy projects in the rural district. So if you choose tonight to adopt this recommendation, I think what that means is that in connection with the Supreme Court appeal against Chelsea, we will continue to fight it. In connection with the Apple Hill project, when that gets scheduled for a hearing and in discovery, we will not make the same assertions that we made against the original project, but we'll still continue our appearance and make sure that that the project remains in conformance with the town plan by virtue of conditions that assure that the things that this board has cared about and directed previously are accomplished. So I'd be happy, that's a summary of where we are. I'd be happy to answer questions from the board.
Okay, so thank you, Rob. Board, I know that we have heard this a lot. We've been through this a lot. It's always good to hear Rob explain it because he lays it out so clearly, and we're very lucky to have you as our town attorney. I think first I would entertain questions from the board, although not opinions, on the elements of Rob's proposal to us. Are there any questions or clarifications that need to be made? No? Jeannie, I know you and I had some conversation you're settled with.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question.
Other question? Question for Rob? Okay.
Yes. Rob, should the town or the board here tonight accept your recommendation with respect to Apple Hill? Now, when you say that you would appear, the town would appear, in what way? Let's say Libby is going to, I presume that Libby is going to oppose this.
I would expect so, given her previous positions.
And when she is to appear, she and her representatives appear in Montpelier, we would be there as well.
But my recommendation to you, Jim, is to handle this the way we've handled other cases in the environmental court, which is that, first of all, we have appeared and we're in the thick of it already, but that we continue to review everything and attend the hearing. The things that concern me as a policy matter for the town is that there's not a switcheroo somewhere in the process. That happens sometimes, things change. That matters of real concern to the town are emphasized, and that we have the ability to cross-examine and participate as needed.
We would.
We would, and I think that that's, given how hard the town has fought on the earlier version, I think that it would be sensible to maintain your appearance and continue on and be sure that what we think is being proposed stays proposed, and that if it's approved by the board, it's approved with conditions that make sure there's not going to be sloppy implementation.
So in essence, our position when we would appear, as you would appear for us as the town, would be in support of our original position with respect to our position on the town plan.
I am not recommending any changes in the position that we had in connection with the original project.
But we would be there in support of Libby and anybody else.
Well, I'm not, in connection with the current proceeding, which deals with the amended plan, my recommendation is not that we oppose it on the grounds that it fails to, the amended plan fails to comply with the town plan. They've made enormous changes to this project.
I'm still a little confused.
Okay. Well, it is confusing. Well, it is confusing. I'm not recommending any change in our position.
In our position.
Towards the original plan.
That is in opposition to the town plan.
The town plan, I would continue to argue, is violated by the original proposal. But what we're having before us now as a result of a ruling by the Public Service Board is a hearing on the revised proposal, which I do not think has the same problems under the town plan as the original one.
Jim, I would ask you not to press him too much further on that if we remain in court on that particular.
I just want clarification. I
I understand. Okay.
Did that clarify, Jim?
Yes, it did. It
Thank
helped.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be.
I'll knock you out later.
Other questions from board members?
I don't have any questions.
You don't have any questions? Okay. So if we'll take a minute here for the public. If you have questions for the town attorney about his position, you may ask them. And if you have brief suggestions to our attorney for amending his recommendation, you certainly may make those also. But I'm going to ask you all to direct your questions to Rob, not to the board, because we're supposed to be biting our tongues tonight. So, Libby, would you like to start? And Rob, I guess I'd ask you to shift over one seat, if you would, please.
I'm fine standing here.
No, but
I think everyone's going to want to hear what you have to say, probably, Libby. So, Rob, you can be in charge of shifting the mic back and forth, okay? Please, thanks. Yeah. Thank you, Libby. I know you don't like the limelight, but I appreciate you coming.
Okay.
You're going to need to be close. I was censored.
So, questions for the attorney, brief suggestions on his recommendation.
Okay. First question, it wasn't clear to me about the settlement. Are you recommending that the board reject the $200,000 settlement?
Yes.
Thank you. Secondly, the revised project, or projects, if Chelsea is going to relive in some form, are still in the Rural Conservation District. And you mentioned the Murphy Road and the Cabelia as that the town has already permitted certain forms of commercial development in a rural conservation district. Is that right?
What I said was that the town plan, I do not think, can credibly be construed to bar alternative energy projects in the rural district because of the precedents, because of the language of the plan, because of the way the zoning bylaws allow specific uses in that area, and because of the planning that's been underway for the future that includes a number of properties in that area for solar energy. That was my summary.
Okay. In one of the Public Service Board's answers to the motion of Chelsea, they related to that specific point. And what they said in the answer to that motion was, Chelsea also emphasizes that the board has approved other projects seeking review under Section 248 in the Rural Conservation District. Chelsea contends that while these projects did not meet the development standards in the town plan, the board nonetheless found them to be in the public good. We disagree with Chelsea's position. Most significantly, these cases differ because no party in those cases produced evidence that these projects did not conform with the town plan. The issue is not decided in these cases, and these cases are thus readily distinguishable. Chelsea's second allegation of factual error is without basis.
I think it's a mistake, Libby, for us to try to litigate this on camera before the entire town when we're going to be litigating it somewhere else. But what that case says is that this issue hasn't really been briefed and decided in connection with the other projects. And I think there is no doubt that in Apple Hill, those issues will be fully developed by the developers. I'm confident that they can see that issue as well as anyone else. So that's not a binding precedent as to Apple Hill.
Okay, thank you. Now, just two other, when you were talking about the history and what they've done to correct it, you said that they've added significant buffering on the highway side, and they have added significant buffering offered in their revised plans for Chelsea and Apple Hill. However, if you look at the revised plans, they've taken away buffering on the east wall of Chelsea and on the north wall of Apple Hill. And so those projects now remove any buffering that the neighborhood of Apple Hill had. So when you say they've offered buffering around the projects, they've only offered buffering on the highway and Welcome Center side, but they've taken away buffering on the area that protects Apple Hill.
I don't think it's appropriate to debate the buffering provisions tonight. I'm happy if the town accepts my recommendation to talk to you about how that issue might be developed in the hearing.
Okay. So the other point is, which I'm hoping you say the same thing, is that the wind and noise issue has never been accepted by me or by the experts that they use. They asked me what expert I would use. I told them, and then they used their own. And we found that the findings were unacceptable to us, as did the Apple Hill neighborhood. So would it be allowed that in ongoing discussion that the wind and noise issue is taken into consideration as well?
My recommendation to the town is that we would continue to work cooperatively with you on issues of concern like that. How they will resolve, I can't make any promises, but I would recommend that we stay in communication on that particular issue.
Okay, so my final question to you is this. It appears that you are withdrawing your presence as the town on Discovery for what Apple Hill is. The opening of Rediscovery, you've said that you will not be part of the Rediscovery, but you will be there in presence to participate in any way you deem that you need to or choose to. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
Okay.
Our participation in Discovery will be driven to a considerable extent by the developer. They get to ask Discovery if they want to flood the zone with the town for reasons that I think would have no technical or strategic value. They're free to do that, and we'll have to deal with it. Whether we do Discovery, my expectation would be focused on very particular issues to try to get them clarified and understand. But I don't think it's correct to say that we will be completely absent from Discovery.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would just like to ask, before any vote is taken, that the exact wording of the resolution get read aloud and formally put into the record, just so that everybody is perfectly clear on what the actual resolution is.
We didn't actually read it. We had you summarize it, didn't we? Would you like to read it, Rob, or would you like me to read it?
Here is the resolution that I would propose that the town adopt, okay? That the town of Bennington direct its council to advance the following position in the pending litigation, and in connection with a settlement offer by ALCO. 1, reject the proposed settlement offer. 2, continue to oppose Chelsea in the Vermont Supreme Court. 3, not oppose Apple Hill on the grounds that the project fails to comply with the town plan in effect when the application was filed. The town will consider whether additional conditions would be appropriate to satisfy statutory standards, period.
Laura.
Just a question about what you said at the end there, the third part of the resolution. What are you referring to as statutory standards? What does that mean?
That is something that I would like not to get into publicly here. What it means is that the town reserves its right to deal with any conditions applicable to the project based on the town plan and applicable law. I don't think getting into that, which would be somewhat speculative at this point, would advance the town's position.
I guess what I was wondering is, does that mean it's a distinction from objecting to Apple Hill based on the town plan, because you're already saying that you believe that the revised Apple Hill does comply with the town plan, but there may be other conditions not based on the town plan? Or maybe I'm misunderstanding.
I'm sorry. Well, I tried to make the recommendation broadly because the statutory criteria are all of the criteria that the Public Utilities Commission must address in issuing a permit. That includes the town plan, that includes a whole range of aesthetic, natural, environmental issues. And I don't have a laundry list here of exactly how that would play out in this case, but I wanted to make sure it was broad enough to deal with any issue that the Public Utilities Commission might take up under its statute.
Okay, and just also to clarify, because the way you're recommending the actual motion to read, it's pretty much the same language that was circulated publicly, I think. And
I hope it is.
yeah, well, right. And so that means that I would just want to be clear that when you say I don't have the exact words, but the first part, reject the proposed settlement from the developers. Does that mean that the town would also reject other proposed settlements? Are you saying that this includes not negotiating in the future either, because maybe they will come back with another negotiated settlement?
It doesn't preclude anything in the future. It says that everything they put on the table we're rejecting.
Just at this moment?
No, that's what I just said, Laura. Everything they put on the table we're rejecting. If something comes back, the town will have to decide what to deal with it. That's all speculative.
Okay, I just was curious what that meant. This just means this particular proposal that they offered. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Come on up. Yeah.
Is it possible for you to vote on the 3 points individually?
Don't know.
They can do whatever a majority of them wish to do.
Okay.
So
Yes.
so you can?
Sounds like it.
Okay.
We don't have a motion yet.
Someone would need to make motions separately, if that's what you wanted to do. But that's not the resolution that I read out.
So you can do that? Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the attorney? Mary, come on up. I'm sorry, I should be asking people to state their names. I'm not very good at this, but do please come up and join us. We're getting kind of used to seeing each other. So.
Mary Garrish from here in Bennington. I have 3 questions, but one clarification from the last one. So it was my understanding that all 3 of these resolution clauses are a portion of the settlement agreement that we're talking about. No, just the first 2?
We're not, the only thing that's dealing with the settlement is that we're rejecting it.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And relative to the third part, which is the decision not to pursue the Apple Hill, I understood you, or what I wrote down that you said, and tell me if I'm misquoting you, is that in their new plan they have, quote, attempted to comply with the town plan, end quote. And I'm wondering, does that mean attempted or they did?
What I said was that I believe they have attempted to do it.
Right.
And my advice to the board is not to take the position that they have failed.
Thank you. Okay, I guess that answers, for me, the translation of that is that we're not sure whether they've complied, but they've tried to, so we shouldn't say they didn't.
That's a possibly correct interpretation of what I actually said, but what I meant to say was I do not want to litigate on public television these issues. I'm trying to be simple and clear, but I don't think it's appropriate to try to pin us down on that exact point.
Okay, and I hear you, and I actually agree, but my concern is that we're pinning the board down here. They're going to actually vote on this tonight. So it's kind of hard to say we're having, comments from the public in a public hearing, but by the same token, we really don't want to get into it. We just want, do you know what I'm saying?
I understand the difficulty. What the resolution says, if they approve it, is that they will direct their lawyers not to oppose on town plan grounds the issuance of a permit before the Public Service Board.
Okay, thank you. And then I have two other questions. One is that in terms of not opposing based on the fact that it violates the town plan because we have other things in rural conservation districts. I guess I had two questions about that. One is, what's the time frame for intervening on the Apple Hill project so that if the board said right now that we're not, if they made number 3 to say, we're not going to oppose it right now or at the present, okay, what would be the time frame? Because I honestly can see where there might be a big difference between an energy conservation district in one place and in another. And I think that's probably at the heart of this, and I think that's probably at the heart of the whole issue for that matter. And so I would hate to set a precedent just because it doesn't say that it, just that we say, oh no, it can't violate the town plan because we have another one in an energy conservation district. I mean, what is the land like beneath that one? What is the rest of the surrounding area like? What is the screening like? What's the wildlife habitat? So I can see where there would be differences. And so my question is, do we want to get ourselves into a position where from now on, we're never going to be able to oppose one of these arrays in a rural conservation district because we granted one somewhere along the line? And then my other question also has to do with precedent, which is that, so if we allow this, and by allow I mean don't oppose it right now, or don't oppose it at all, aren't we setting a precedent to allow anyone to come in and decide to build whatever kind of alternative industry in a rural conservation district?
I think your first question was, can someone still intervene? And you can certainly try. The town of Bennington got in 2 days or 3 business days before the hearing. If you want to try to intervene,
No, I meant could the town intervene later?
The town has intervened. The town's a party to this.
Apple Hill?
The town's a party to Apple Hill. That's where we've submitted our briefs. That's where we've taken our position. Look, in terms of the town changing its position, the provision that the resolution I proposed says no settlement. There's not going to be a contract with the developer. If something came up and there was some compelling reason for the town to take its position before the hearing's over, there's nothing in this resolution that would prevent it from doing so because it's not entering into a contract. But quite frankly, I don't think that there's going to be further developments on interpreting this language that would lead me to recommend a change. But if it turned out there was, I would tell the town what I thought. What I think you may want to consider is that the town plan is being reviewed right now. And one of the issues in town plans, and this is not really a Bennington issue as much as it is other towns, because Bennington's town plan is quite good, but to the extent you or anyone else thinks the town plan needs to say something else explicitly that you're hoping it would say implicitly, there's a process underway to talk to the planners for the town and suggest certain language. Right? That's not foreclosed.
So I guess in that case, I would still like to suggest that if the board is going to accept the third resolution or segment of the resolution, I'm not sure how it's written, that they at least amend the language to say at this time or relative to the facts currently known to us. Because I'm still concerned that by saying, no, this doesn't violate the town plan, or at least failing to affirmatively state that it might put us in a position of having to say the same thing when further projects come up. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Other questions for our attorney? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Vicki Lamperin, and my question has to do with helping to heal our town and fix the rift that's developed over this huge issue. I'd like to ask the attorney, have you or the town considered employing an energy democracy strategy? And if you give me a second, I'll explain what I mean by that. Okay?
I'm going to ask you to be brief.
I will.
Brief.
It's real quick. Energy democracy is a political, economic, social, and cultural concept that merges the technological energy transition with a strengthening of democracy and public participation. Waitsfield, Vermont. They're building a solar array on a municipally owned piece of property. It's going to...
I'm going to ask you to really direct your questions to Rob, please.
It's going to supply with energy the town office, the Waitsfield Elementary School, the Waite House, the Waitsfield Fayston Fire Station, the town garage, and Jocelyn Memorial Library. So has any of that ever been considered for our town?
I think that that's really a question that is a broader question than what's right here, because what we're dealing with here is a long-standing application to a regulatory board for a specific project. And that project, we have to deal with that. This resolution that's been proposed is how to deal with a very specific case. How the town deals more broadly with this issue, I think is something that's a political question that at some point, at an appropriate point, you need to deal with the board, whoever on. But really, we're focused right now on a pending application that's been submitted, has been revised, that's going to be set for hearings, and that is a legal regulatory process that is not one that fits with this, unless they want to withdraw their application and start over going through this process. But that's up to the developer.
And I'm not talking specifically the land, Apple Hill or Chelsea. I'm talking about municipally owned property.
Yeah, that's not the resolution here.
I hear you. Thank you.
Okay, one more thought, one more question, and then after...
Wait, we have a couple.
One more question.
We have a couple, so let's make sure we get them all in.
All right.
I'm Diana Leeser. You had mentioned that sorry. You had mentioned that there was, and I don't know if I'm quoting you correctly, that there was a plan, a solar siting plan that hadn't been completed. And in fact, it has been completed and unanimously approved by the solar siting board.
It hasn't been approved by the select board, so it's not an official town document at this point.
It's supposed to be going through the process, which seems to be taking a long time. So perhaps that's something that should be noted, that indeed, more than likely, it will go through. So that should be something to take into account as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, can you move that chair, please?
Thank you. Yeah, my voice carries. Looking nasty. I agree with Mary Garish. I think some of the points she was hitting on, and my questions to you are, if you pass this tonight, is this going to allow, like Mary said, other developers to come in under the rural conservation to be able to put more of these solar, wind, or whatever? And have we weakened our town plan by doing Murphy Road? And are we weakening our town plan if the select board does not keep their feet to the fire and continue to fight this at Apple Hill?
I never read the town plan as prohibiting all alternative energy everywhere in the district. I think what they've done is consistent with what I see as the text of the town plan. If you or other citizens think that all rural conservation zones should be off limits to alternative energy, I think you better get into the discussion we were just talking about, having to do with that map of where solar facilities might go, because that map isn't consistent with your reading of the plan.
But didn't the plan come way before the map? And didn't the plan protect us? Isn't that what we all understood?
The plan protects you according to its terms, and according to its terms, the original project didn't comply. The terms dealt very specifically with how development should take place in that district. But it didn't function as a prohibition of all types of alternative energy all through the rural conservation district. It set standards for that type of development.
Were you consulted when it was originally done, this town plan, when you adopted this town plan with that rural conservation?
Not in that issue, no.
You weren't. Will you be, if this group goes forward with the map you're talking about and other things, can we get you people to have him make sure that, I think the majority of the people in this town do not want every green space.
Mike?
Oh, I got to send it to him? Okay.
No, continue. Mike, this is questions to the attorney, not opinions.
All right, but I think you need to help us, this group, as the town attorney, to get something in the town plan, that we're not being eaten up, all our green space, and trees can be chopped down and everything else.
All I can say is that the town plan has been revised in ways that, based on my reading of other town plans, is probably one of the best in the state on this issue. Whether the standards it sets up as revised and as under discussion are the ones that you or somebody else here would want, I don't know, but they certainly are making an effort to try to be much more specific on dealing with these issues.
Well, we'll make sure they are. Thank you.
So I'd like to cut this off, but I'm going to let Mary Morrissey come up and be our last comment. Okay, so this is the last question for our attorney, and then we are going to move forward with the meeting.
This actually may not be for you, Rob. It's more for the board. There were amendments and also other suggestions as to taking the resolution one by one to vote on. How is that going to be dealt with by the board?
I'll look for motions after we're finished.
And is that done by the board?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to, if there are motions for or against, or if there are any motions that have to do with this, I would accept them at this time from the board.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion that we address each one of these issues separately.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Vice Chair, would it be inappropriate for me to...
Can you speak?
Yes. Would it be inappropriate, Mr. Vice Chair, for me to ask just a show of hands of these people?
Yes, it would be at this point. We're really, this is a board discussion, Jim, at this point. So we've got a motion on the table and a second. So we're really, this is a board discussion. Yeah. So right now what we're voting on is Jeannie's motion to take these individually. Any discussion? No? So all in favor of taking these individually, say aye.
Second her motion.
Didn't I have a second?
Yeah, I did second.
Oh, you did?
Didn't Jim
Okay,
second?
okay.
Yeah. So all in favor of dealing with this resolution in pieces separately, say aye. Aye. Okay, I'm opposed. So, Jeannie, how would you suggest how would you like to go from here?
Well, I'm open to anyone's suggestion as to where we start.
Can we just make a motion that Rob read the first, sorry. Can we just make the motion that Rob read the first part, and we vote on the first part?
Okay. So, you've made a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we...
Let's not make a motion that Rob read it, but you've made a motion to accept...
the first part of the resolution.
first part of the proposal. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Would it help, if I may, would it help for me to read it for the record so everyone, and the record's clear as to what you're voting on?
I think it would, yeah.
And I'd be happy to do that for the next two also, if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The resolution is that the town reject the proposed settlement from the developers.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Motion to accept and a second of the number one, which is titled settlement in this, in the attorney's position. No conversation? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye. So we
Proud of this board for
have
doing
6
that.
in favor of rejecting the proposed settlement from the developers. The second piece that we have is continuing to oppose Chelsea in the Supreme Court. I'm sorry, Rob, you were going to read these, weren't you? Rob, would you please read the second one?
The second resolution is to continue to oppose Chelsea in the Supreme Court.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion on this, on the motion on the table? No? All right. All in favor of the motion as worded, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
That was...
I beg your pardon?
Unanimous.
Yes, 6. Okay, Apple Hill, the town will not, sorry, Rob, would you please read the, I'm learning.
There was a suggestion that this be tweaked to say that based on facts currently known, the town will not oppose Apple Hill on the grounds that the project fails to comply with the town plan in effect when the application was filed. And I think that's a completely appropriate tweak. I don't have any problem with that. The resolution will continue. The town will consider whether additional conditions would be appropriate to satisfy statutory standards.
Okay. Does everybody understand
So the
that
resolution as stated includes the amendment that it's based on facts currently known.
So based on facts currently known, comma, the town will not oppose Apple Hill on the grounds, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
Second? Okay. Discussion?
I'm very apprehensive about this one. I'm very apprehensive about this one. I really am. As I've said to other board members, I think that both of these projects are in opposition to our town plan. And I can't support this part of the resolution.
Other opinions on Rob's recommendation to the town? Okay, I'll call the vote then. All in favor of number 3 as revised, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 5-1. So, thank you very much for that.
That's dangerous.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it, Rob. It's not been easy, but I also want to thank you for the time you spent with us in executive session, not to mention the time that you will be spending in court going forward. So, It's too early to take a break. Why don't we call our illustrious Tom Jacobs back?
And take a break.
5-minute break? All right, 5-minute break.
Donald, it was well done on all sides, and thank you, Rob, for your expertise. Even the lawyer in the back room could understand, back of the room. The next item on the agenda is, let me get to it.
Capital equipment borrowing. Thank you.
Capital equipment borrowing, and Stu, you're going to be leading that discussion?
Yes, we have two borrowings that we'll be presenting to you tonight. The first is for $232,735. It's to purchase two pieces of equipment, an excavator and a dump truck, and these are borrowings which go through the it's People's United Bank that we're working with, but they are underwritten by the state's highway equipment fund, which allows municipalities to access monies at a reduced interest rate to pay for large pieces of equipment over time. That is the first note. The second note is $75,607, and that is to, and I didn't bring my glasses, so I'm going to really struggle with this. Oh, thank you.
Don't look at the sun and the solar.
Yeah, I know, I've got that problem too. This is to purchase, and I can't read it, I'm sorry.
Would you like me to read it?
If you would just tell me what we're going to purchase with it.
The second one is for an F-550 dump truck, a smaller version of the normal purchase.
Thank you. See, I had part of Friday off and all of today off, so I've lost track of everything that was working. So that's what we have for you tonight. Two borrowings. They were all anticipated in the budget. The funds are available to pay for the borrowing cost, and I'm not sure that's me that's getting that feedback. So I present these to you. It would require in each case a motion to waive the reading of the resolution and to accept the borrowing as presented. I do understand that there may be people who have questions about this particular agenda item, but I leave that to you, Mr. Chair, how you want to handle it.
Sure. Before I entertain a motion to waive the reading of these two items, if there are questions, feel free. Joey, did you just introduce yourself, and we'll see if we can't be responsive.
Joey Culkin, Bennington. I'm just going to read something. It should only be a minute or so. I just want to start by saying that I think most people in here would agree that we have the best highway crew in the state. They're always there for us throughout the year, especially in winter. And I certainly appreciate everything they do. Each of you select board members is being asked tonight by the town manager to buy two pieces of equipment for the town garage. The cost for these two pieces is $232,000, and the town manager is asking you to let him borrow the money. One of the new toys is a wheeled excavator that costs $157,000. The highway and water garage has 52 pieces of machinery. One of them is a 2008 wheeled excavator with low work hours, which means it doesn't need to be replaced for several years. The taxpayers of Bennington are hurting these days. It's hard enough to pay for a bag of groceries, let alone $5,000 a year in taxes. It's only going to get worse with the upcoming sewer bond for $12 million and the new town garage bond for $3.2 million and next year's bond for $1 million fire truck and the $1 million FEMA payments. And that's not including the multi-million-dollar TIF bond vote in March. Bennington taxpayers, including most of you on the board, are getting bonded up the wazoo. So my question to each of you, Tom, Don, Jimmy Joe, Jeannie, Jean, Carson, Chad, is do we need to borrow $232,000 more right now? When does all of the borrowing end? Taxpayers and voters watching at home right now no doubt hope that each of you on the board shows fiscal constraint right now and rejects this request to borrow $232,000. We can't afford it right now.
As to the question about the equipment, and you've defined them or suggested new toys, I think I would like to hear from Stu and RJ relative to the adequacy or accuracy of the comments that we have these pieces already in place and we should defer that expense for this year.
Well, I'll let RJ talk to the specifics about the equipment itself, but remember, the monies that are going to be used to replace pieces of equipment with these pieces of equipment, we're not adding to the fleet, we're actually replacing pieces, it's already been budgeted. It's already been figured into the tax rate, and if you recall, the highway tax rate went up by less than a penny, incorporating these costs into the budget. So we're not putting additional strain by doing this borrowing. We're simply following through on what we asked you for and what the voters approved back in March. And I know that Joey has additional questions about the whole borrowing scenario and how we borrow and what departments borrow. And I haven't had a chance to sit down with him and lay out all of our
Okay, that's not even the subject for tonight. I think the issue tonight is whether or not...
The monies for these pieces of equipment are already in the budget. The voters have already approved them.
But to be responsive to the question of, is this duplicative of what equipment we already have? Do we need this equipment, notwithstanding it's in the budget? I'd like to hear more. I think the presentation by RJ when we had our budget meetings was we went over specifically the various pieces of equipment, including, I believe, these, but maybe it's worth just revisiting some of the reasons why.
Hi, I'm RJ Jolly, Highway Superintendent. Yeah, these are pieces of equipment that we did discuss budget times. There's nothing we threw in extra. We do have the truck. It's getting the body put on right now, which is one of the pieces of equipment spoke of. The track excavator, we decided we rented this machine for the last 2 years, and we decided it would make a lot more sense to purchase this track excavator because after 2 more years, we would own it, and they gave us 100% of our rental money towards the purchase. So that was pretty much a no-brainer.
Say it again, explain that, I don't understand that.
Excuse me?
What, the rental that's paid, what happens?
It's like lease to buy.
You own it.
Oh, I see, so that money that we paid for rental will go towards the purchase.
100% of it went towards a purchase.
And this very testimony we heard back at budget time, so it's not coming as a surprise to at least us, we that heard the request back at budget.
No, absolutely nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Thank you for restating it. Keep going.
The 2008 that Joey spoke of, wheeled excavator, will be put out to bid. That is budgeted. This machine has 7,169 hours on it. We've had it 9 years. That's longer than we've kept in the past. It is on the capital plan for replacement. So I don't know where they get the low hours, but it's well more than most municipalities would put on in 15 years. So I don't know.
RJ, if we were to keep this piece of equipment with this number of hours on it, you know, what's the long-term prognosis on the cost of, you know, repairs?
I don't know, Jim.
Well, what's your experience with something like this?
It's still in good shape. The top of the house is all rusted. You know, the joints, the swinger that you hook the bucket to, that's $15,000. We replace that once, and probably within a year we'd have to replace that again. Runs good. There's electrical issues. You have to shake this and wire, and there's some maintenance. There's some electrical stuff that's happening. The fuel lines get loose and rub quite frequently. Every year I think we have to do maintenance on those.
What's it cost in a year to do this sort of work? What'd you guess?
I figured in the last year, from what is estimated for the trade-in and what the town paid for it, there's a $20,000 difference in 9 years.
And I think perhaps for the folks at home, we're talking about, yes, we're borrowing large sums of money. In the first instance, the annual cost will be $33,248 in order to borrow that $232,000. In the second case, the borrowing of the $75,000 will cost only $25,200 a year. And part of the idea about using these funds to purchase large pieces of highway or water and sewer equipment is that you maintain a relatively stable cost. As equipment ages, you replace it according to your capital plan. It keeps your cost and your tax rate relatively stable. If in fact we were to go out and buy a piece of equipment for $157,000 in a given year, your tax rate would spike and then it would drop back down. And in this way, the taxpayer has a stable tax rate that they're looking at on an annual basis. And I think historically, certainly with our highway fund, we've rarely exceeded inflation over the last decade by using this principle on replacing equipment and borrowing. I think it's good financial sense.
How is it that you came up so far under budget, which is great, on 33,248? Do I miss it?
We'd actually, and I don't remember the exact number, but we did come in because the rates that we were able to achieve with the borrowing are less than what we anticipated. I think we're somewhere in the range of $5,000 to $7,000 less than what we budgeted. We're at 33 on the two pieces, and I think we were anticipating close to 40.
Okay, I didn't understand the question.
45,000.
We got a great deal on the truck this year, the best deal I've seen so far. They gave us $30,000 for a trade-in, which was double what we normally look at, so. Plus the truck was a great price also.
Point of clarification, Stu, we paid 2 years rent on this vehicle so far?
Correct.
Now, does that decrease the overall purchase price?
Yes.
Here? Okay,
Yes.
so what would that actually be?
Well, the dealer deducted the rental payment from the purchase price. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but...
So it wouldn't actually be, what's the figure for the excavator? What's the figure that you're quoting? 45,000?
I think we financed 75,000 for the remaining.
Okay. I'm still not clear on, what the amount of money.
Oh, I have it right here, Jim. It's 103 minus 26,000 for the 8-month rental credit,
So,
which is 77,000.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Joey, do you have a question? Sure.
How many excavators do we have between water and highway right now? You just buy a whacker that you sent 3 months ago?
Yes, we did. We have 3 total.
3 excavators?
Yes.
I've heard, and from what I understand, but I don't know if it's true, did the whacker break down like 3-4 times in the first week of service? Had to be repaired several times?
It's been broke down for a week or 2, but it's one problem. It's not ongoing different problems.
So this is a used 2 years old, and same thing that happened.
The whacker is brand new.
I'm just going to bring up here, we have a small audience, and RJ's here. I don't want anyone to leave shaking their heads. I mean, Stuart and RJ are going to know answers to things. If you guys clapped when there was a concern about purchasing more equipment, I'm sure people at home might. I mean, now's an opportunity to question things, and it seems as though that Stuart brought up a very competent plan in respect to why we purchase equipment this way. RJ's here to answer questions. If something's complicated or intricate, I mean, I'm new to this as well. I mean, I wouldn't put RJ or Stuart in a position to answer every quantified, everything down to the penny, but can we take an extra second here? I mean, I hate to put these guys in a position to, on the hot seat, but let's take a second and try to get some answers out. I don't want anyone leaving here. Here we go. Let's take a second and go with it. Come to the microphone, though.
When you say it was in the budget, well, how much was in the budget? If it was in the budget, why do you have to borrow it? I don't understand. How much did you put in the budget for this? 48,000?
We budgeted, and Tom corrected me, thank you, I didn't even think to go back to my memorandum. We budgeted $45,100 for the purchase of these two pieces of equipment. Given the prices that we got them for and the borrowing interest, we're only going to be paying $33,200. So we've actually saved close to $12,000 because of the competitive bid process that RJ goes through and because the interest rates have not risen as we anticipated they would.
But is that not a little deceiving that when you say you budgeted for this and it's in the budget, and then you come back and you say you need to borrow 200 and something thousand? I think that's what's throwing the public off. Why wasn't this budgeted for 200 and something thousand and the voters got to approve all of it? I don't think the voters understand what they're approving.
Well, it's because the expenditure that is in the budget is the cost to borrow, but not the cost of the equipment. If the budget had included the cost of the equipment, the budget would be $200,000 higher than it is, and obviously the voters would.
Do you feel the average citizen looking at the budget understand that when they say your equipment is only going to cost you $48,000 and then 6 months later you're coming up to this special meeting for
It's presented to the select board as a borrowing exercise during the budget process. It's shown in a light item that it considers principal and interest payments. It's not shown as an equipment purchase per se.
Right here, I guess the suggestion is for the future, 99.99% of people are not going to be reading line by line. So this says to direct me to this line, $228,000. If people don't know what that means, why not just put a B next to it and then a little narrative? We're going to be borrowing $228,000.
Well, my presentation to the select board includes that narrative at budget time. That's when these issues are discussed.
In open session, too. If anybody wants to come to the budget sessions, you can do it. Now, do you have a specific question?
Yeah. Stuart.
Identify yourself, please.
Pat Kinney. Stuart, will you tell them what's going on here today? You're looking for a lease purchase signature from the board like we've done in the past, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
The money's already been in the budget to purchase this stuff, right?
That's correct.
So
this is actually under budget.
Just a signature on the paper for a lease purchase. That's it.
And that's technically what it is, but in order to do this, you have to borrow the capital.
Yes.
Because the dealer needs to get paid the amount for the equipment. What we're doing is we're then paying for that over time, generally 5 to 7 years.
But we also have another excavator, RJ, that we purchased?
We have.
No, the Hitachi's been purchased. That's the one we're talking about. The one that isn't up to bid yet is the 318.
Okay, but the Hitachi's already been purchased, and that was approved last year's budget?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was.
That purchase has been approved.
Well, you got a lot of equipment, Bob. I wish I'd have had it.
The thing that's impressive, though, is that the budget for the highway department, it was less than 1%, half of 1%. What was that?
It was, it went up something in the tune of 0.197.
Yeah.
The rate went up.
Yeah.
It was.
If now, you already bought the Hitachi, but you just mentioned another one, a 318 that you haven't bought yet?
Yes, but that is
That's not on that bond.
No, it's not on this one. It'll be presented when we have the competitive bid in and we know what we're going to be paying for.
RJ, why do we have 3 excavators?
Why do we have what?
3 excavators.
We do a lot of work, Jim. One, the water department has, they replaced their...
Say it again?
The water department had I'm guessing, 18, 19-year-old rubber-tired backhoe, in which they're pretty well outdated. In these days, they're not real handy because you can't swing all the way around. They're kind of prehistoric as far as I'm concerned. So they replaced it with a wheeled excavator. In the last 6 or 7 years, we've rented a wheeled or tracked excavator in the summer so we can get the sidewalks and curb in and still do the other projects. We're usually doing 3 or 4 projects at once, so what John Deere gave us for a buyout deal with all that rental money was just outstanding. So we went that route other than keep renting and sending it back in the winter and getting it the next year back. It made a lot more sense just to purchase that small track excavator.
So during the rental period, when you weren't using it, it would go back? So
correct.
Okay. Go ahead, Jean.
Are we done talking about equipment? This has to do with another piece of what Joey said. It had to do with the TIF district, and I just feel like we need to take every opportunity to educate the public on the facts of what the TIF district and the financial structure of that is. Dan, would you?
That's going to be next session, right? We're going to be spending an hour or plus to do.
I just think it would be great if someone.
I think we'd serve only to confuse the audience, but. And those are all valid points. And I think, Joy, it would behoove you and Stu to sit together and talk about the budget process so that if there are questions about it, that they can be answered to your satisfaction and to others, because it's an education process that we go through every budget season. And it's a challenge. I mean, we can go down to the town garage now when it's all under one roof and see all of the equipment, but frankly, that's not going to do anything for me to get the town highways in the condition that we expect them to be.
I hope not to have the equipment under the roof. We hope to have it out on the job sites.
Could we have a waiver of the reading of the resolution to accept the notes? You need 2 of those, don't you?
You can do them separately or you can do them together. You do have to sign both.
Yeah, both. Could I, for the purposes of the discussion, have a motion to waive the reading of the resolution and accept the notes as presented?
I move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussions.
I'm just glad we have a good capital plan, and I'm glad that we follow it, and I'm glad that we don't leave a lot of deferred maintenance for other select boards to deal with, so thank you.
It's difficult to follow it, given the things that change during a given fiscal year, but we do our best.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the accepting the notes as presented?
Aye.
That's 6 in favor, 7 in favor, no abstentions.
Yeah, I had a question. Did you just raise your hand, ma'am? Did you want to say something about this before, or you were supposed to? Why don't you come to the microphone?
All this money sent in different funds and we're paying
Microphone.
to borrow money, is that not stupid?
You just answered that twice.
Yeah, she's answered her own question and asked the same question twice.
There are 3 pages that you all need to sign on each of the 2 notes.
Are we all in favor then? 7 in favor? Okay, good. Thank you. Moving on, Steve. Next item.
Manager's report?
Yeah.
I included in the packet a schedule for the bond vote for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Jeannie did bring to my attention that the proposed public hearing date of October 9th was only 1 day before the vote, and she asked whether or not that could be moved back to get some separation. So I think she had suggested October 2nd, which is the Monday before. If this board agrees to hold a special meeting to discuss just that particular article, that would probably be good. And so put that in your thought process that we may be looking to push the public hearing portion of that schedule to October 2nd, not October 9th. And I can also tell you that the most recent cost estimate is in the range of 9.8 to 9.9 million. So they've found some additional savings as they continue to move through this process. And on August 28th, the engineering firm, Aldrich & Elliott, will be here to make a presentation to the public and to you folks on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, what it entails, where the costs are, and what the impact on the rates will be. So we'll have all of that information August 28th.
That's the next meeting? Next meeting?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, next meeting.
Yep. That's critical, because there are a lot of us on the board that are going to need to be educated as voting members of the community as well. This is a big item, and we do need a lot of advanced information, and I know the state is mandating that we move very quickly on this, but frankly, we've got to move with appropriate dispatch and not just have it ramrodded without knowing what we're getting into. And it sounds like from what I hear from management that that's an ongoing effort, and we will be brought up to speed on August 28th.
That's correct. I also just want to make an announcement here. On Thursday, the 17th of August, that's this week, Governor Phil Scott will be in town to award the $1 million Vermont Community Development Block Grant monies to the town of Bennington that will be used as part of the Bennington Redevelopment Group's efforts on the Putnam Hotel Complex. He'll be here at 11:30 a.m. And we'll make the presentation in a public forum.
Be twice in 1 week?
I know, think about that.
Really? We're going to have to get him a room.
Good news.
Good. Anything else?
No, that's it for tonight.
Other business? Gene?
Great work on the parade.
Stole my thunder.
Sorry, buddy.
It was great.
Would you do the board and the public a favor by introducing our new executive community director?
Yes. Zirad, if you would please, would you come up to the table? This is to formally introduce the community to Zirad Chowdhury, who is our new community development director, and I hope I've pronounced that last name correct.
Almost.
Almost. I'll learn. Zirad is now with us full-time, and we are hoping that she comes up to speed very quickly, because we do have a lot of work ongoing in that department. And I should take this moment to thank Mike McDonough, who served on an interim basis, who kept the office moving. And as you know, Mike has stayed on on a consulting basis to continue to work on the TIF, and he'll work on the disposal of the 2 highway garages as well when we develop an RFP. But Zirad is on board and working hard.
We're looking forward to working with you, and we're available. Not all agendas follow the course of the last couple, but we do keep things kind of hopping. I really appreciate the fresh perspectives that you will bring with your background to the community. It's all about community advancement, and we as a board stand ready to support you in whatever ways and means that we can accomplish that. Your thoughts, and we'll chat more about it.
Thank you very much for this welcome. I look forward to working with each of you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's fine. That's all I have.
No, nothing for me.
Good. You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay. Gene?
Oh, I do have 2 things. One, I just want to say there was a great presentation at the Charter Review Committee, and I don't know if that PowerPoint is up on the Charter Review Committee's page on the town.
I don't know. I don't think the PowerPoint is up yet, but we do have the Charter Review Committees up on the website. We have a link to their various minutes, and there's also an email address now that people can contact the committee and ask questions. There is a second email that I don't think is up just yet. We were trying to get it up last week, where it will be a non-responsive email site, but this would be allowed people in the community to propose changes or to ask questions that won't be responded to at that time, but will be implemented into the record and their minutes, and then will show up on the website when those minutes come back out.
Okay.
So they're working really hard to try to involve the community and bring the community in to their meetings. They are meeting weekly on Wednesdays from 11:45 to 1, currently at the town office conference room.
Cat TV covering this month?
No.
They did not, and that's why I'm thinking if we can get the PowerPoint up, because it went through what the Charter Committee could do, and it also compared us to other communities, and also made some recommendations of just places in the Charter that the committee might want to look. It was just really excellent.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I just think that would be great. And I also just want to say, I mean, many of us were at the TIF presentation.
That was well done.
Which was really well done as well. And, you know, I was really happy. I just want to say thank you to John Shanahan, who made sure that merchants were aware, and a lot of merchants came to that. And I think that's really important, so.
We're going to, Dan, you're going to be primed for the next meeting?
Yes, we'll be ready.
Yeah.
Our consultant said she's never had such attendance for meetings regarding the TIF, so she's very happy with the folks that are turning out.
Dan, when are we going to get the solar siting before the board? The ordinance?
Goes to the Planning Commission on the 21st. They'll set their hearing, and then once they have the hearing, it'll come to you folks.
Okay.
Chad?
I just have one quick thing. I don't know if people have seen it, people with smartphones, the Chamber, and I think connection with the Bennington Banner and Manchester Journal has a Go Shires Vermont app. If you've seen it, it's a great app.
Really?
Recommend people download it. I mean, obviously for people visiting the area, but just events, places you can eat, stay, different things. And I think it was mentioned at a previous board that someone else was doing this, another community, and I'm just glad to see it here. And
what's it called again?
Go Shires Vermont, I think is what, if you type in Go Shires Vermont, it'll pop right up. And just doing a couple of quick searches myself, it was just finding different things that I wasn't even aware of. So it's a great app. It's free.
Good price.
Better, best.
Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn? Thank you very much, Linda.
So moved.
Second.
I'm happy to sit with you for a sec. Okay.
Okay. We're adjourned? Thank you.